get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. This is Coach Terri Lance, and I am here today with a very special guest. I have someone here with me to do a member transformation episode, and I've been asking for this one for quite a while, and we finally were able to coordinate it and have it lined up well. So I'm very excited to get to introduce to you today Kimberley Seitz. Many of you who are already in the community are probably familiar with Kimberley, but for those who aren't, I think you will get to see why I wanted to do this episode. So welcome, Kimberley. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Terri. I'm great. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak today. It's been a privilege.
Absolutely. Before we dig in, I want to just mention to listeners, Daisy is an amazing editor for our podcast, but she cannot take out all of the sounds that are probably going to happen in the room that I'm in today. I am kind of shut in with 3 dogs. One trying to take something away from another one trying to get away from that one, and a vacuum cleaner out in the hallway. So if you hear any background noises, trust me, we have done our best to minimize that. So Kimberley, one of the reasons that I wanted to get to have you on the podcast is not only for you to get to share your story, but I feel like as I've gotten to know you over time at TFM, that you just always have so much wisdom that you provide, whether you share in a meeting or if I see the comments that you write in the side, and then so much that you put into the forum. So I'm very excited to get to actually dig in with you and talk about your journey. And I realized I don't know a lot about your journey, actually. So I'm really curious to just learn about kind of where have you been in this health, wellness, weight journey, whatever parts of it that you want to focus on? And I'll have lots of follow-up questions, I'm sure.
Well, thank you. I've appreciated being part of your groups, Terri, and I haven't been able to lately, but I miss them. And so I'm hoping when I get back from vacation, I can get back into them because I just learned so much from all the members and from those conversations. And so I'm very grateful that we could have this conversation today and you and I can get to know each other a little bit better too.
Very good. So where would you like to start? What parts of the journey do you want to share here?
I wanted to start by just saying that I hope that by the end of this conversation today, that the key takeaway message might be that change is possible, because I know that when you're struggling, when you don't feel good about your health or you're overweight, the smallest change can feel daunting. It doesn't matter if it's your first time trying it or your 100th time trying it. It's just difficult. And so I hope that by sharing my story today, that people feel a little bit more inspired to just start the journey, because I think it's those small steps that really make the big difference. And as I was preparing for our discussion, I was reflecting back on my health transformation. And I realized that I've been successful in making this radical health change not by just doing 1 or 2 specific behaviors that we might learn through the fasting method, but really it's been a myriad of success factors that have been a result of 4 significant mindset changes that I've made over the last 6 years. And it's those culmination of those mind shifts that have resulted in my releasing 135 pounds and reversing 4 major health diagnoses. So I want to share that journey with people. But before I do, I want to quickly just give a little context as to where I started before I had that first mindset shift in 2018. And I had always been an active, young, thin child and young adult. But it wasn't until I went to college that I started to gain weight. And my problem was I gained that at freshman 15, or maybe it's the 20 now, I don't know, but it didn't stop there. And then years of trying to fix that just gave more misinformation about the foods to eat, the way to eat, the type of food, the amount to eat. It all resulted in like this yo-yo weight battle that I was on, where I would lose a significant amount of weight and then just regain it plus. And then over time, that yo-yo approach and all the unhealthy foods that I was eating caught up to me. And I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I had type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, kidney disease, and an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. Of course, with every one of those diagnoses comes lots of medication, but also a sense of constant feeling of failure. It felt like no matter what I did, I was destined to lose the weight and then regain it. So it felt really frustrating to even start. But the one thing that never changed for me was this belief that there was a right approach for me. I just hadn't found it yet. So I was hopeful, but also kind of discouraged. And I remember very vividly in 2018, sitting on the couch, thinking about, once again, what am I going to do about my weight and what did I want to do to change, when something shifted in my thinking. I realized like it was kind of like one of those aha moments where I thought about, well, what if instead of trying to lose weight, I just shifted my attention to trying to create better health? What would that look like? And that was my first mindset shift. And really specifically, I wanted to drop the diet mentality, which is so deficit based. That perspective had me trying to accomplish everything at once, always by a specific timeline, being a certain size and a certain weight. That would be how I defined my success. And no matter what, it always left me feeling anxious and like I was never doing enough or the right things. And so I thought, what if I flip it? What if instead I use a strengths-based perspective and I focus my attention on creating health without the urgency of a false timeline, since health would be something I could work on the rest of my life. And that definition of what was healthy could keep changing. So I asked myself, what would be the one thing then that I could start with or eliminate that would have a radical shift towards that better health? And the answer was pretty clear, because at the time I was drinking a lot of diet soda. And so I felt like, all right, I can make that commitment. But it was pretty big for me because you might remember, like, up until probably that time frame, diet soda was heavily marketed. Everybody was drinking it. It was the kind of the thing, the drink of choice for a lot of people. And I was drinking a 2-liter of it a day without understanding the impact it was having on my health, because I thought it was going to be okay since it was diet. But it wasn't until after I had been off of that diet soda for so long, in fact, I think it had been months that I'd been off of it, that I realized all of a sudden that all of the joint pain that I'd been experiencing for years had completely disappeared. And I made no other change than just dropping the diet soda. And so I was kind of inspired. And I was thinking, okay, well, if that worked, what's something else I could do? So 2019 rolls around and I set my intention. And I didn't recognize it at the time, but that was really the beginning of an intentional habit stacking plan that I've done for the last 5 years, and that continues to help me refine my health goals. And if you're not really familiar with what habit stacking is, there's a lot of different ways people define it, but I like to think of it as intentionally integrating a new habit into a daily routine while you maintain all the previous habits that you've learned. And that way you continue to stack and evolve your health towards a bigger goal. And so that's how I defined it. And I didn't want to do it based on like a particular schedule or a timeline. I didn't want to have it regimented or structured in a way that made it feel like kind of the diet mentality did. So I just decided to do what felt right at the right time and in the right order. And sometimes it would take me a few days to integrate a habit. Sometimes it would take weeks or even lots of months, like maybe 4 or 5 months to get something that was really harder to do. But the thing I kept focused on was to integrate things that felt good, that were energizing, that I felt joy around, that were drawing me instead of feeling like it was punitive or difficult to do. I wanted to keep that feeling of energy towards it because it was working. And so I remember having a conversation with my endocrinologist who was really worried about my metabolic syndrome and my type 2 diabetes. I was telling her what I was doing, and she said, well, I think you should try to do an 18-6 intermittent fasting schedule. And I'd never heard about it until that point that she had told me about it. And I asked her what that would entail. And she said, basically, you're going to miss breakfast and you're going to eat lunch and dinner and you're not going to eat anything else in between. And I remember telling her, I can't do that. She asked me why. And I said, because I have to eat 5 or 6 times a day. I literally eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then I have snacks. And when she asked me why I did that, I told her because I feel hypoglycemic and like I'm shaky or I'm not very clear if I don't have these regular snacks. And she said that she was positive if I would just give that up for like 4 or 5 days, that I would feel so much better. And so I wasn't sure, but I told her I would give it a try. And I remember going home and thinking that, okay, I trust her. And she obviously knew this. She had done a lot of research and I knew that she wouldn't lead me astray. So I thought I'd just give it a week and see what happened. And by the end of the week, I felt so much better because I wasn't constantly spiking my blood sugar. And I began to feel hopeful, like sustainable change was possible rather than just experiencing the win of a fad diet, which I had done so many times before. And so I was really inspired and again, motivated by that. And in 2020, I was trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And I knew I was going to be off of work for 12 weeks because I was going to have neck surgery at the beginning of March. But before I could get clarity around that, the pandemic happened. So I remember watching the news and seeing this really high death rate for people who had comorbidities, especially those with kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. And it was really scary to me because I realized I was one of those high-risk people that I was watching on TV and that this could become very real for me. And so I made a decision in that moment that I needed to treat every day between that point in time and when I was going to go back to work as a gift, and to look at it as the biggest opportunity to do as many different things each day as I could to try to stack in health that would basically get me as healthy as I could in that time frame before going back into a work setting. And I thought one of the things that would make the biggest impact would be if I would start moving more. And I had already been walking our dogs twice a day, but I thought, well, what if I just extended those? That would be an easy thing to do. So I did. And then pretty soon I felt like I would add in a third walk. That would be a good choice. So I did that. And then I added a fourth walk. And by the end of the day, I had quite a bit of steps going and I felt fantastic. I had all of this clarity and I was using the walks to kind of clear my head as the stress was getting to me throughout the day. So it was also really cathartic to do. And I was feeling more comfortable with the physical movement. And a friend called and asked if I would go on a hike. And I remember telling her I didn't think I could. And when we really got down to it, the reason I shared with her was I was a little hesitant because of my size. I wasn't sure it would be a good or a safe thing to do, or that I was even worried about holding her back. But she told me that we could take it slow and that we could do it at my pace and that it would be okay. And so I trusted her and I fell in love again with hiking. And it's something I hadn't done since I was a kid. But what happened from that experience was that it changed the way I viewed my body. So I started really looking at my body as capable rather than there being something wrong with it. And then I started viewing my body as a gift and not a problem. So as time progressed, I was having these like really big mindset shifts, but I was also releasing a lot of fat without the constraints that would normally have been present if I had been following a previous diet or under that diet mentality. And that just naturally led to the desire to want to eat better. But I did not want to go back to any kind of diet because at this point, I'd been struggling with weight for 30 years and I'd done every possible diet. And the idea, it just felt very restricted. And so I thought, well, what would it be like if instead of following a diet, I just added in 2 non-starchy vegetables with each meal, a protein, a fat, and a carb, a small carb. And I did it doing the 18-6 fasting schedule. And so I did, and the weight just started melting off. And so I thought, okay, so I'm on to something. So I had all this renewed energy. And so I was thinking, what else could I do? And I remember hearing about the importance of getting really good quality sleep. So I started focusing on that. And then that started to feel secondhand. And I thought, okay, well, what about like reducing stress? What could I do to add wellness activities in? So I added in things like yoga and meditation that would just slow my mind down. And then I thought, now I'm ready for the big one. I'm going to tackle sugar. And that was pretty big for me because I had been addicted to sugar 30 years. And so I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But when I really reflected, I remember journaling about it and thinking I cut out most of the starchy carbs that I'd already been eating. So I knew my cravings were less. And I realized it's going to probably be about a week of being miserable. And then I'd feel great on the other end of it. And actually, it really wasn't even that long. I think it was like 3 or 4 days. And it wasn't that bad because I really credit it to having given up a lot of those starchy carbs before that. So it had reduced the cravings and the withdrawal effect I was having. But I felt better than I had felt in years. And I had a tremendous amount of energy again. And that's when the second mindset shift happened. That was 2022 when all of a sudden it dawned on me that I'd been incorrectly defining what healthy meant my whole life. So I had previously been thinking about it as like a number on a scale or a particular size. But when I realized that I had already released this 135 pounds, I literally was half the weight that I was when I started. I hit my goal weight. I was at the size I wanted, but I still felt like there was something missing. I hadn't quite gotten to the optimal health that I was hoping that, that sense of aha on the other side. So I knew there had to be something more to do. So I went back to my why statement and I further defined it. And when I looked at it, it was really, I wanted to age gracefully and with vitality. And what that meant to me was I wanted to be free from chronic pain and disease, able to enjoy hobbies and travel without restriction, and living an independent, full life full of energy. And so therein kind of lies the problem because I had already released the 135 pounds. I was eating healthy. I'd freed myself from chronic pain and disease. My doctor, in fact, had told me I no longer had diabetes. I didn't have sleep apnea anymore. I didn't have metabolic disorder or kidney disease. I still had the thyroid condition, but all of the other medications were gone. And all of those other health diagnoses were reversed. And I was able to enjoy hobbies and travel without restrictions. So what was missing? And really, it was a sense of feeling like I had enough energy to really feel like I could tackle what I wanted during the day and to not feel like I kind of had to drag myself through parts of it. And so that's when it hit me that the number on the scale is all an illusion. At least it is for me. So that's when I decided that I needed more. And I turned to the power of food. And I got a CGM so I could continuously monitor my glucose levels and evaluate the immediate impact that food was having on my body. And then at some point in that time, I asked my doctor to help me undergo a 3-month, very strict autoimmune protocol elimination diet, where you basically eliminate almost everything so that you can find out what you have food sensitivities to, and then understand the effect of those food sensitivities with relationship to the inflammatory effect they create on your body. And as you do that, you get to feel immediately like what food feels like in your body when it's working for you and when it's working against you. So that was really exciting for me. So I embarked on this year-long mission to kind of try these different types of food approaches using a CGM and figuring out what worked and what didn't. So I did 2 Whole30 challenges. I did paleo and keto and low carb diets. I learned as much as I could about all of them and experimented with different types of ingredients and cooking things differently. And I'm incredibly grateful to have had that experience and to be able to experiment so much that year. But the one thing that happened from all of that experimentation was I loosened my food rules up to be able to do it. And then as a result, I gained back about 20 pounds. But gaining that weight back was actually a huge blessing in disguise, and it led to my third mindset change. And this, I think you'll resonate with, Terri, because this is kind of how we started talking about the idea of me coming onto this podcast. And in 2023, my husband and I went to Greece to celebrate our 30th anniversary. And I remember feeling extremely self-conscious about all the extra weight that I'd had, that I was hoping I wouldn't have by the time I went to Greece. But I did. And I looked around and I noticed that everywhere I looked, there were people of different sizes. And some of them were like 100 pounds plus heavier than what I was. Yet they appeared to be extremely comfortable wearing a bikini or a Speedo in some cases. They appeared very comfortable with their bodies. And I was literally very aware of my size and trying to hide behind my bathing suit. And that's when it hit me. I had this aha moment, like literally on the beach in one of these beautiful places in Greece, where I realized if I had just been born in another country where they didn't have the diet and the beauty industry making these unrealistic demands of what our bodies should look like, I'd be completely at peace right now. So I came back and I immediately got into one of your groups and I asked you about it because I wanted to know how do I fix that? Like, where do I go with this big epiphany that I just had? And one of the members, I don't even know who this person was. I wish I knew because they really changed my life because they recommended that I read the book, My Body is Not an Apology. And so I listened to a Brené Brown podcast where she interviewed the author and was completely enamored by the whole concept. And it just really spoke to me. In fact, I get goosebumps even just now thinking about the power of this book. And so we had a lot of discussion through your groups. And then I created a forum thread where we talked a lot about it. And it seemed to really resonate with a lot of people. And so one of the other coaches at TFM offered to make it into a book club book. And we really dove into it for several weeks, about a month. And it was a wonderful opportunity to talk with other people from all over the world. That's what I thought was so cool about it, is we had people from literally probably almost every continent in part of this conversation talking about what it was like to be in their body and their cultural views of it. And I realized it's so specific to your own lens that this was really the power of opportunity for me to change the way I viewed myself. And so because of that book club and because of all those discussions that we had in your subsequent meetings during the week, I was able to release all of the shame and the guilt that I had about my size. And I realized I didn't have to apologize for my size anymore, no matter what size it was, whether I was on the thin side or the heavier side. It just didn't matter. But more importantly, something clicked inside my head. And I thought, I don't want to be judged by an external beauty standard made by people I don't know, I will never have met, and give them the power that determined how I felt about myself. So that mindset change led to this inner feeling of peace, love, and acceptance about my size, and also a decision to not weigh myself any longer, because I realized that scale had led me wrong for 30 years, and I didn't want the power the scale had over me to dictate how I felt about myself or delineate my success, how I felt that day, or how I defined healthy. So I stopped weighing in, and I don't weigh in still. I use other metrics to figure out if I'm on track or not, but I just let go of that scale, and it was like the most empowering thing ever. I just wish that everybody had a chance to have some sort of empowering experience like that. And I feel like in some way, that's part of what attracts me to TFM, because it's an opportunity to create a sustainable lifestyle that's not a fad. It's not a diet. We learn how to feel good physically, but also we pay attention to the mental health aspect of that so that we focus on wellness, I think, which is just as critical piece of it as the metabolic piece that we work through. But one thing that's really powerful to me is a sense of community that we have, because we have people, again, from all over the world, but the one thing we all share in common is this commitment to transform our health, not just in the food and the fasting realm, but also everything food and fasting adjacent. I'm really kind of into biohacking, and I've had the most incredible experiences talking with other members, again, that I would never have the chance to meet if it wasn't for this group and these conversations that were happening. So I'm incredibly blessed to have been part of this experience and to have had these people help support me along the way. And then through reading like Megan and Dr. Fung's books, I became more clear around what the science was telling us around weight loss and what contributes to weight loss or weight gain. And I've been able to eliminate all of these fallacies that I've been lied to over my life from the food and drug industries related to dieting and beauty. And so it's just given me a sense of peace and mind and a new understanding about what my body is capable of doing and how it works. And that's really led me to my final mindset change, which is actually a practice I've had for more than a decade, but it's something I'm really focused on in 2024. And that is to remain in a state of gratitude, because I feel like when we're grateful, we can't fear, blame, judge, or be anxious, either towards ourselves or other people. That creates a sense of peace. And when we're grateful, we get to create the space to generate more of the good things. And that's what I feel like TFM offers, is a chance to be around these people who are making these positive transformations, these sustainable changes. The coaches, the community members, Dr. Fung and Megan, they've all been such a huge and integral part of my life, and we've never even met in person. So I'm incredibly grateful, Terri, to you for giving me that space to have that conversation a little over a year ago, and for being able to explore it a little bit more today. But also, I'm really incredibly grateful to everybody who's given me the chance to dig deeper and to learn to love and grow and accept myself through this process, and to remove the diet mentality lens that has been so restrictive and allow something bigger to come through. Because what I've learned from this is to really be grateful for all the mistakes that I've made and to see them as part of this journey. So the more mistakes I make, the greater clarity I've gotten. And the greater clarity I've gotten, the more it's helped me to realize that change is never linear. We're always going to face these trials and errors, and we're going to have these setbacks, but it's these opportunities that come from those setbacks and those trials and errors that give us the true value and the feedback that we seek, that allows us to grow and change and make that all happen. So I really hope that by sharing my journey today, that it helps somebody out there recognize that you don't have to do this all at once, and you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. All that's happened is that you've been given misinformation about your food and your body. But that's also the good news, is that you've been given misinformation. So you can transform that misinformation into actionable steps to create the life you want. And there are others out there who are willing to help you do that and to help lift you up and support you as you go along that process. So as I conclude and we get a chance to talk, I just like to say that if I could give myself some recommendations, if I could go back in time and think about, like, what would I have wished I had known at the time that I started this journey 30 years ago? The answers would be, think small. Forget that whole adage to go big or go home. It's wrong. Just think small, pick one small change that you're energized and excited about, and start working towards something that you want to create. And consider the habit stacking process. It might work for you. I would also suggest to join TFM for a month and to attend as many groups and classes as you can to see if it's a good fit, because the more you can get immersed in it and try different coaches and different groups and be part of different members' experiences, the more you will learn about yourself, and you'll see if you can find the group that's right for you or the classes that would help you the most. And if you can't join TFM, then watch Dr. Fung's YouTube videos or listen to these podcasts, because I learned so much from them. And I really did dig deep into TFM when I first joined. I kind of took a deep dive, but I learned every single time from listening to a podcast or listening to one of the videos, something that just strikes me differently, or I think about it in a different perspective, or I hear a member share something different. And that learning just continues to propel me forward. And then I would also say to give yourself time. Don't think of this with a diet mentality lens in terms of months. Don't hold yourself to a false timeline. Think of this in terms of years, and know, like, this has taken me 6 years and I'm still making mistakes and having setbacks. I'm still learning, but I'm okay with that because I'm embracing that as feedback. And by letting go of the timelines, I get a chance to have more freedom without the restriction. And those setbacks create the space then for opportunities and more growth to occur. And so those are actually things I look forward to now. And then finally, and I think this is kind of one of my bigger pieces, is be careful how you talk to yourself, because the words we use create our worlds, and your brain's always listening. It doesn't know the difference between the truth and the lie. It will believe what you tell it. So why not believe that you matter and that you can make a difference? So that's kind of my spiel.
Wow, I am still here. I muted myself just to sit back and listen. And Kimberley, I just feel like you have taken everything I've ever touched on in the past 5.5 years that I've worked at TFM and polished it and made it so palatable and user-friendly. I feel like there's nothing more I could add. So incredible.
Thank you. And if I did, it's because I've taken what you have said in all of your groups and classes and your master classes, and I put it to work. I've worked the plan.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I think people find is, I know for myself, I've always been looking for what thing's going to fix it for me. Maybe this plan will fix it for me. Maybe this pill will fix it for me. Maybe this piece of exercise equipment will fix it for me. And I still sometimes struggle not to get caught up in that hype. And what you really described is you get out of this process what you put into it.
Absolutely.
And this is not a process for what's that saying, the faint of heart. Like, it's not an easy process. The actual steps to do and the strategies are not complicated. But digging deep and doing the internal work to make these strategies actually succeed for you, that's not easy.
No, I agree with you completely. And I would say that that's where the most opportunity lies, though, right? Because anybody can read a recipe and what to do and not do, but it's the actual application of that makes the difference.
Absolutely. So one of the things I was thinking when you kind of wrapped up with what you shared is that not everyone gets that experience with us.
Yeah.
But not because it's not available. It's because you really poured yourself into the experience. I have watched you connect with people in the forum and offer, hey, you guys, let's do this. And people get excited and connect with you. That you have gone above and beyond. I'm going to go to a couple of meetings. I'm going to listen and get some information. I'm going to print out a handout. You poured yourself into it. And I think from everything you've said that's really paid off for you because you have been filled in so many ways. And you do this not just in TFM, but you do this in your life in general. And I think it's so much also about your mindset overall. You have a growth mindset at play here, that there's more, I can learn more. How can I do that? How can I utilize my strengths? I love that you talked about taking this from a strengths perspective.
Yeah.
When I became a counseling psychologist, one of the things that concerned me about psychology is it's often pathology based.
Yeah.
And I hated giving diagnoses. I hated talking in pathologies. Instead, your focus on the strengths. What can I build? How can I create health? I had like 400 mic drop moments as you were talking. I was taking notes. I'm like, oh yeah, that. Creating health versus how can I fix this body that doesn't look the way it should look?
Yeah.
That's the wrong approach and it'll never feel good.
It never does, emotionally or physically. And it's draining. Like if you approach something from a deficit perspective, there's automatically a problem, right? Whereas if you just flip it and you can pivot towards what do you want to create more of, then there's a solution. And often there's more than one solution. And solutions are usually generative and very life affirming and fill us with energy. So I would much rather move towards that than to try to eliminate and fix a problem. Like it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as you went through your process, you did eliminate some things, but not from the general way that I think a lot of us think of it. Like, what can't I have now? It seems like you really explored what helps me, what doesn't help me, What things do I consume or use that serve my body well? And what things do I consume or use that interfere, cause difficulties, cause discomfort, dis-ease? And what things promote wellness and feeling good?
Yeah, it was a lot of outcomes because I focused on the outcomes I wanted to create. So yes, I may have like eliminated sugar, but really it wasn't about the elimination of sugar. It was about the creation of feeling good and finding better health. So maybe the task was to eliminate something, but the actual goal and the outcome was to feel better. So, if you focus it again, it's all about how you view, and those words create those worlds. So if you tell yourself that you're going down a path and you can't do something and it's going to be hard and awful, it will be. And if you tell yourself you're building resilience and you're moving towards a better, healthy life that feels fantastic and gives you the energy, then that too will happen. So it's really just a choice.
Something I think so many people get caught up on, and in my most recent masterclass, we talked about goal setting. And I have always struggled with the concept of goal setting because I think we're often taught to focus on things that aren't necessarily most helpful for us. So when it comes to wanting to be at a different weight, and I love that you use release weight rather than just lose weight. If we want to be at a particular weight, people set that as their goal. I want to lose 75 pounds. I want to lose 150 pounds. I want to be at 150 pounds. I want to get to a size 8, whatever it is. I get why we want those things, but I think framing them in that way almost always backfires.
Yeah.
What you described is you are going for outcomes, but they aren't a number on a scale outcome. They are markers about how I feel. And again, not just physically, energetically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. Those are tangible markers.
They evolve. So that was the other nice thing, is that as I started feeling better, things evolved. I couldn't have started thinking I was going to do all these things I did. I mean, I tried that for 30 years. It didn't work. That's the diet mentality of doing everything all at once. But when I started something, and then as I was moving towards it, it evolved and changed, and I too evolved and changed, then it gave more space to continue that journey. Whereas if things didn't evolve and change, like by looking at something as, focusing on improved health, that concept's always moving, right? As you remove layers and as you get better and healthier, that keeps moving. And so that is energizing in itself, to keep going after something that feels good versus I want to lose 100 pounds. That doesn't feel good from the very beginning.
I couldn't agree more. I have said this at various times in various places, but you've captured it so well. Ultimately, I really see it this way in our lives, that setting a definitive goal, like I want to reach this weight, again, going back into diet mentality, there's a done point. And if you get to the done point, that's my clinical term, if you get to the done point, there's nothing more.
Right.
And so you have no direction then. Your behaviors are irrelevant then because you've made it there. That's not the way we live our lives. We don't just make it there. We have to be there and thrive there and continue, as you said, continue to develop and evolve even once we're there. And so that's one of the limitations, I think, of diet mentality. It says, you're not there yet. You need to get there. And once you get there, you're done.
Yeah.
And when I think of that in our overall life, there's only one time when we're going to be done.
Right.
And then we don't have to worry about any of these things. But until then, I want to be actively engaging. So I love your way of approaching this and thinking about it. And I feel like I could talk to you for 6 more hours. I'm like, oh man, I should have called her earlier today. There's so much more here. But I also loved that you closed with a question that I definitely would have asked you to follow up. What advice would you give yourself? Because I hope people take lots of things from today's conversation, but I hope they take those pieces of advice. Think small, not to think of yourself as small, but to think small steps, little bits at a time, the habit stacking. I'm, of course, biased with you. Join TFM. Give yourself time. And you also said to be careful what words you use because, again, your brain is listening. What words you say to yourself, whether you say them out loud or silently, your brain hears and believes.
Yeah.
So if you say, I want to reach this goal, but internally you're saying, it's not possible for me. This isn't me. I can't do this. This is too hard. Your brain is listening to all of that. So like you said, your words create your world. They create your reality. So I hope people really take this and go back to the very first thing you said, that you hope everyone gets from this today, that change is possible. And my sense of you is that you knew you have the power to change. You kind of function in that world. But my guess is going back 5 or 6 years, you didn't know how much change was available to you.
Absolutely.
How much change you could create.
Yep, you are correct. And I think, that's one of the things about like your discussion earlier where you just said that in the diet mentality, done is done. Then what? That's the reason you gain all the weight back. Because then you stop all the behaviors because you met that finish line. Whereas if you're looking at health as transformative and constantly evolving, then you just keep evolving your behaviors and you keep stacking and you keep modifying the way you view yourself. And so there is no finish line. And so, yes, I think change as a possibility has been my mantra my whole life, but it's definitely key to the success I've had in this process.
Yeah. I can kind of see it as you were talking. It's almost like surprise even for you. Like, not only is change possible, like I'm owning it. I'm making it happen. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So great. I think this is one of those episodes where everyone's going to listen more than once. Kind of like what you said about, maybe going to a meeting or listening to one of Dr. Fung's books or reading one of the books or listening to one of Megan's meetings or something. Every time you pick up on another little gem. Like I said, I was writing notes all over this. It's a bill, but I was writing all over this thing. And I feel like I'm going to listen to this again and I'm going to keep picking up gems to help me in my own journey, but also help me in my work as a coach. You just laid out so many amazing things here. I can't thank you enough for taking the time you took to prepare for this and to share all of this with us. I really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you. And it's been a privilege to be able to give back a little bit because you've changed my life, as has TFM and all the members that I'll never meet in person. But each one of them comes in and they say just the right thing at the right time, or they give you accountability, or they encourage you when you're feeling discouraged, or maybe they give you even a little bit of like scientific information that helps you get past something. So it takes literally the community to make the difference. So I can't speak enough of just the positivity that this group has meant for me. And I bought the lifelong membership because I thought, I don't want to ever have this not be part of my life. This is going to be sustainable because I have a community of people who understand and get me and will always be there to hold me up and to support me when I need that extra time. So I'm happy to be part of this. I'm privileged to be able to have this conversation with you, Terri, and that you did change my life when you let me have that space to ask that question. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking it, because I think it not only changed your lives, I think it opened up opportunities for a lot of people. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Like I said, I feel so overwhelmed listening today, and I think this will be a really powerful episode for others. And I invite you to listen again, save it, share it with your friends. I think this is one that so many of us need to hear. So thank you, Kimberley, for being with us today. I will look forward to continuing to see you after your vacations. I hope you have a great vacation. Probably you'll be back by the time this airs, so I'll be getting to see you again soon. And again, just thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, take good care, and we'll be back to you next week with another episode of the Fasting Method Podcast.